Right, good morning, Year 10. At this point, obviously we've been in lockdown now for several weeks. You're a quarter of the way through your Weimar Nazi Germany course. So what I'm not going to do here is talk you through everything you've done, but I'm just going to give you an overview of where you should be. Now it depends which class you're in, whether you're in A, B or C, but when you get to the end of lesson 12, the lesson set online, you should have completed the first section. Now before you left, you should have got one of these. If you didn't, we know a lot were off in that last week, then it's attached to every PowerPoint. If you can print it, that's great. If not, just keep a sort of a note of it and we can give you a copy when we get back to school. These are the 4 sections of paper 3. It looks like we're going to be missing, sorry, this is Jess the dog by the way, it looks like we may well be missing most of this. And this is 30% of your course. It's really important that we learn this thoroughly. When we do get back to school, we're going to go through particularly the technique you need on the longer exam questions. Jess is bored already, you probably will be too. Okay, so basically this course is looking at Germany from 1918 to 1939, from the end of the First World War to the beginning of the Second. Doesn't really have much in the way of foreign policies. We're not really looking at causes of the Second World War. It's looking at Germany between the wars, Weimar to Nazi Germany. Like all the exams, there's 6 questions, a mixture of 4 mark up to 20 mark questions, and those longer ones especially we'll do back in class. The key thing is when we get back into class, you've covered the bulk of the knowledge that we can then use it and develop your skills. So all I'm going to do is kind of talk you through what you've done. As I say, the first 12 are looking at this section of Weimar Germany from 1918 to 1929. So the first question, first PowerPoint was a timeline to give you an overview. Number 2 was looking at the impact of the First World War. So in 1918, the Kaiser abdicates. A couple of days later, the armistice is agreed, and now Germany, the old Kaiser has gone, and we've now got a democratic Germany. And this sort of suddenly imposed upon a really weak Germany. Germany is suffering from strikes, crises, mutinies in the navy. The country is on its knees. And the politicians who agree with the armistice on the 11th and so agreed to the armistice on the 11th of November 1918 are those that are then going to set up the Weimar Republic, as we call it. Now this is a democracy, and one of the big issues is the very men who agree to end the war, to surrender effectively, are the men setting up a democratic state. So they're going to take that blame with them. So that second lesson was looking at the legacy. It was looking at the social, political and economic effects of the war. The third lesson is looking at the constitution. What I mean by constitution is how you set up a government. And this is an entirely new form of government, incredibly democratic, incredibly fair. And it was looking at the strengths and weaknesses. Some real strengths: everybody gets a vote, men and women at equal age. That's way ahead of Britain. We've also got complete freedom of speech, which is great. And then we have a Reichstag, a parliament and a president, both elected, with the president selecting who's going to be the chancellor, the prime minister. However, there's some major weaknesses. Because it's very fair, everyone's vote counts, so we end up with a parliament with lots of parties, so we often get regular changes of government. So unlike Britain today, where we have one party who have a majority, you don't have that. You've also got a president who can assume presidential powers, emergency powers, which he can decide whether and how long they last. And again, that's quite a dangerous thing. And finally, freedom of speech, which allows basically all the opponents of the Weimar Republic to openly criticise it, which isn't a great start. Okay, fourth lesson looked at the Treaty of Versailles. Remember that acronym, Land, Arms, Money, Blame, the LAM acronym, and you looked at that in year 9. Now obviously the Weimar Republic starts quite weakly, and now it has to agree to really a dictated peace, which is incredibly harsh. The fifth lesson looked at the early attempts to overthrow the Weimar Republic. So we get the Spartacists. So these are extreme left-wingers who want a communist revolution like the one in Russia. And in early 1919, there is basically fighting on the streets of German cities, and the leaders, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, are killed. Now it's largely put down by not only the army and police, but also ex-soldiers called Freikorps, who are going to be really important. Extreme right-wingers, hate communists, very patriotic, and also really quite open to using a lot of violence. Then in 1920, we get a right-wing push. This is an attempt by Wolfgang Kapp to establish a much more traditional form and overthrow democracy. This one is destroyed by the workers, who now go on strike to stop the push. So the Weimar Republic struggles for its first 3 or 4 years. Amazing that, frankly, in some ways, it even survives. On to lesson 6. Right, lesson 6 looks at 1923. It's a really crucial year of the history of the Weimar Republic. In 1923, Germany defaults. It cannot keep up its payments, its reparations from the Treaty of Versailles, and so France and Belgium send troops into the Ruhr, a heavily industrial area of Western Germany. They occupy it, and they basically sort of seize back what's owed to them. The German government has a policy of passive resistance, and then also famously a policy of printing money, and this is going to lead to probably the most famous aspect of the Weimar Republic, hyperinflation. Now, hyperinflation is where money is devalued to the point where paper money becomes worthless. Prices skyrocket, and there are massive effects. The economy collapses. It hits particularly the middle classes, because the people with savings in the bank suddenly find those savings are worthless. A few feckless people in debt actually do okay because your debts effectively are cancelled. You've now got workers being paid daily, in some cases twice daily, people famously paying with wheelbarrows of money, children playing with banknotes, people heating their homes by burning banknotes. So Germany in 1923 is in crisis. In November of 1923, there's a third attempt to overthrow the Weimar Republic. Now, we're going to cover this in key topic 2, but I'll tell you now, a young man called Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party are going to try and seize power in Munich, and they're going to fail. They're then going to get elected democratically, but that's all part of key topic 2. Okay, our next section looks at Gustav Strassmann, because then extraordinarily from 1924 to 1929, the Weimar Republic stages quite a recovery, and crucial to this is Gustav Strassmann. He's not Chancellor for most of the time, he's mostly Foreign Minister, but he is the leading individual. There's a number of things which he does now to stabilise the Weimar Republic. First, in terms of economics, the key developments are, first of all, the Dawes Plan. So basically the Dawes Plan is borrowing large amounts of money from America to kickstart German industry and to help pay reparations. And then in 1929, the Young Plan plans to extend reparations and to cut the overall sum need to be paid. And finally, to end the hyperinflation crisis, a new banknote, the Rentenmark, with limited amount of supply, which ends the problem of hyperinflation. So Germany's economy now starts to pick up. And the second key area is in foreign affairs. Obviously, Germany at the end of the war is seen as like the scapegoat, the pariah state that started the First World War. Well, under Strassmann, a few key developments. Firstly, the Locarno Pact of 1925, in which basically Germany agrees to the borders of set out of Versailles. Secondly, 1926, Germany is allowed to join the League of Nations. Strassmann actually even wins the Nobel Prize for Peace. And finally, in 1928, Germany agrees to the Kellogg-Briand Pact, an international agreement not to use violence. So by the end of this period, it looks like Germany is recovering. It's then all going to fall apart in 1929, but again, we're going to come back to that in key topic 2. Okay, so that should have taken us up to lessons 8 and 9 are looking at that. They're also looking at some source questions, but also some interpretations of Strassmann, because a lot of people have said that Strassmann's reforms were like papering over the cracks, like literally just covering over deep-seated problems. Another famous phrase is dancing on a volcano. That effectively German recovery was based upon American loans, and therefore it's a very fragile economic recovery. And also many conservatives, and a lot of the Nazis, said these foreign policy reforms weren't reforms, they were just sort of giving in to the Allies and just selling Germany down the river. Right, the final 2 lessons of this section, key topic 1, are lessons number 11 and 12. Remember, all the PowerPoints are labelled. Need to make sure you're going through from 1 to 12 and then keep working on from there. So the last couple will look at, firstly, changes in society in terms of living standards. So living standards do improve in the late 20s. Unemployment falls. There's unemployment insurance, improved housing. The next part is looking at the role of women. Under the Weimar Republic, women were given complete equality in terms of access to professions. Women were obviously given the equal rights to vote. And you also get development of what we call now new women. And this is seen all over the Western world in the 1920s. In America, they're called flappers. You've seen the fashions with the short hair, short skirts, dancing like the Charleston. In particular, America, it's really interlinked with jazz, with much more freedom for women. And this also happens in Germany. And for a lot of conservatives, they look at this and they're fairly frankly appalled at how women are behaving. So this isn't just something that's happening in Germany. This is a wider change in the role of women in the 20s. But for particularly the Nazis, they're quite appalled. And the last section is the cultural boom, because Berlin in particular in the late 1920s becomes the place to go if you want a party. Cabaret, nightlife. It effectively takes over from Paris as the go-to city in Europe. Homosexuality is pretty much kind of just open and allowed because their freedom of speech. Cabarets involve people criticising and saying anything they want and making fun of their political leaders in a way that we would today. There's also massive changes in art, so we get great artists like Otto Dix and George Grosz who start painting extraordinary paintings. And on PowerPoint number 11 and 12, there's some lovely examples of Weimar art. We also get development of the Bauhaus School of Architecture and what we call modernist architecture. So Germany now is leading the way in terms of the arts and in culture. And then in 1929, it's all going to fall apart. And it's all going to fall apart with the Wall Street crash, which is then going to lead to the rise of the Nazi parties. And by 1933, Hitler will be Chancellor, and by 1934, he'll be a Führer. Anyway, so that's key topic 1. Lessons 13 onwards, then go to look at the Nazi party. So we're going to go back, right back to the end of the war, and look at Adolf Hitler's early years, the Munich Putsch, the wilderness years in which the Nazis don't do very well politically, and then finally 1929 to 33, we're going to look at that period where suddenly the Nazis have massive growth in support, largely particularly from the unemployed and from the middle classes. This film might appear slightly disjointed. That's because we've shot it in 3 or 4 sections, mostly because certain members of my family, my wife basically, has taken watering and trying to distract me as many times as possible. I do apologise for her. Anyway, that's lockdown, isn't it? Locked up with your family. It's great. Right. So, key things. 1, keep working through the lessons. Don't miss them out. Make sure you've covered all of them. Secondly, in terms of sort of being in touch with myself and Mr. Grant, we've heard from most of you, but not all of you. Don't panic if you're dropped behind. We can catch up. But obviously, let us know and we can help you. We've also given you all access to a site called historyhomework.com. Well done for Connor for spotting loads of mistakes there. He's earned some money back from the company. We're going to ask you to log on and to do some tests online, and we can see how you do. You can also redo them. So make sure you're doing that. And again, uptake at the moment. Oh, what's this? This is Tuesday the 12th of May. At the moment, a lot of you haven't done that, so you need to kind of get that one sorted out. And as I say, we now move on to the rise of the Nazis. So we'll keep putting your lessons on. We're going to put them on literally dated for the day you've got them. They should still be there, even if the date's passed. Any problems, myself, Mr. Grant, we're accessible all the time by email. Give us a bell. Thanks.